A zoom action is a lot like a down or flare screen action in that it involves 3 players. The player in the middle of the zoom is the screener. Their job is to screen the defender who is guarding the offensive player coming off the zoom. They want to make sure their shoulders are square so their back is facing the player with the basketball. The player receiving the screen comes right off the screen toward the player with the basketball. And finally, the player with the basketball's job is to dribble right at the screener and then turn their body to deliver the handoff. Let's take a look at why the zoom actions are so effective. Zoom actions are a great example of creating good spacing of not only the offensive players, but also the defensive players. Look at how the action created a bunched up situation on one side of the floor. Usually this would be considered bad offense, but what it creates is 3 defensive players bunched up as well and takes away a help defender. The result of this action from a bunched alignment creates great spacing, thus opening large gaps to attack the basket. Now that we know what the zoom action is, let's focus on the different looks a zoom action can create. The first reader option is to attack the basket off the dribble handoff. It is very similar to a ball screen where the player is working to get their shoulders past the hips of the handoff defender. Once the ball handler has accomplished that, then they have a large gap in the middle of the floor to attack the basket. If the player cannot get all the way to the basket, they may still have an opportunity for a mid-range shot with either a pull-up, runner, or floater. The final read for the ball handler is a catch-and-shoot 3 off the handoff. If a team jumps under the handoff to cut off any driving opportunities, the 3 should be wide open. Just like with ball screen reads, if a shot is not created by the dribble handoff, the next look is for the handoff player roll into the basket. Watch how the defenders on the weak side move from the help position because the ball handler is dribbling towards them. This creates a large gap in the middle for an easy dump off. Defenses will do everything they can to stop the ball handler from turning the corner and covering up the roller. Another counter is the kick back to the wing. On the reversal pass, watch how the defense jumps to the ball, giving the post an excellent seal opportunity. The zoom action can be run in many different ways. Just like any action in the motion offense, coaches can add elements that fit best for their team's personnel. Now let's take a look at 2 popular variations. Many teams run the zoom action within their motion offense. Teams will look for opportunities in their motion to create a zoom action, much like a motion offense that looks for down screens or flare screen opportunities. Because of this, zoom actions can happen in the middle of the floor as well. Watch here as Davidson is running their motion offense. Once the big catches the ball, they are looking to follow a screener into the natural zoom action. There's a lot of space in the middle of the floor for the great open look. Another popular twist to the zoom is creating staggered zooms. This is just like a regular zoom, except this time there are 2 players in front of the ball handler setting what looks like a staggered screen. This can be a very effective action when teams are playing pressure man-to-man defense. This is because there are 4 defensive players tightly guarding in one area. When the ball handler gets the corner turned, the gap to attack can be very large. Many teams will use defensive adjustments to take away main zoom reads. Let's look at 3 popular counters that you can add to your playbook. Teams will also try to switch zoom screens to break up the action. Back cuts can be a very effective counter. In this play, watch how the defender's eyes are focused on the screen. This leads to a great back cut opportunity. Even when the back cut doesn't produce an easy layup, it can create a smooth transition in the other actions. As you can see here, after the back cut clears, it creates a 2-man side. The player going to set the screen in the zoom becomes the handoff player, and you and I get a layup for the big roll into the basket. In this play, the defense denies the handoff and the back cut isn't used. Again, this player clears and this creates a two-man action on this side of the floor. The player setting the screen reads the situation and comes back for the handoff to get an open look. Here's another counter action that involves a player who is the initial screener in the zoom action. Teams may fall asleep preparing for the zoom action, and a simple basket cut can get an easy layup and keep the defenses on their toes. Here's another example of the screener making a cut before the zoom. This time it looks more like a slip cut than a back cut. However, it gets the same results with an open look at the rim. Watch here as Loyola gets a great post up on a mismatch with this simple face cut. Notice the defensive player's head as they think a zoom action is coming. Here's one more wrinkle that Loyola uses with both players cutting and clearing the side of the floor. This creates a natural isolation that results in a post-up. Even if you don't want to use a zoom action within your half-court offense, you can still add the action to your playbook. In fact, this action is seen in all sorts of sets, even baseline and sideline out-of-bounds plays, and even against the zone. Let's take a look at a few of our favorites that you can use in a big moment when your team needs a good look. One of the most popular set alignments across all levels of basketball is the horns alignment. That's where you usually have a big on each elbow and two players on the wing or in the corners. Penn State is a team that runs the zoom action out of the horns alignment. This set begins with a point entering to the big on the elbow and following their pass for a fake dribble handoff. As this is happening, the ball side guard clears to the other side of the floor. The other big turns to set a down screen for the guard in the opposite corner. After faking the handoff to the point guard, the big dribbles at the down screen to create the zoom action. Penn State ran this set 4 times in one half and 3 times in less than 2 minutes and got a great look each time. UNI runs a similar set out of the horns alignment. When the point guard enters the ball to the big, instead of following this pass, they cut toward the weak side. The point and the other big set a staggered screen for the player in the opposite corner. The big dribbles at the staggered screen to create the zoom action. A big setting the back screen into a ball screen has become a very popular action in the college game. Northern Iowa puts a wrinkle to this action that instead ends in a zoom action. The point guard hands the ball off to the player in the corner who reverses it to the opposite slot. The big then sets this back screen for the player who just reversed the basketball. Normally the big would set a ball screen next, but UNI passes to the big. The passer fouls their pass for a fake handoff, which leads right into the zoom action for the point guard in the corner. Penn State runs the same action with one slight difference. The initial player in the slot sets a down screen for the player in the corner to free them. Once the ball gets to the slot, this set looks exactly the same to the one we saw from Northern Iowa. Another great place to run zoom actions is within the transition offense before a defense can become set. This is so successful because teams worry about finding shooters in transition, which creates large gaps to attack off the zooms. As you can see here, some teams flow right into zooms in their transition game. Other teams may use zoom actions as more of a set offense through a secondary break. If you remember the Penn State backscreen set we just talked about, watch how they run that same action here within a secondary break to get a quick look. One specific action is very popular within transition offenses that leads to multiple zoom opportunities. Let's take a look at a couple of our favorites. The Loyola zoom motion is used on both made and missed baskets. The action begins with the ball being entered to the big at the top of the key. Instead of entering the ball and turning the set of down screen, the player will foul their pass over the top for a fake handoff. Then this player and the other player in the slot would set a staggered screen for the player in the corner. The big would foul the stagger to complete the zoom action. The other action off this entry is a great way to get your point guard involved in a zoom action at the top of the key. This time watch as the point guard enters and the player in the opposite slot cuts over the top. It looks just like the staggered action. The only difference is this time the point guard is going to fake a staggered screen and come off of the screen at the top for the zoom action. Northern Iowa runs a very similar action to begin their offense. This time the point guard enters the ball and cuts over for the fake handoff. Notice how the point guard's side is overloaded and now has 2 players on it. The big waits for the point guard to clear, and then a zoom action occurs for the player in the corner.